Hey guys, today I'm going to talk about three sustainable landscaping practices, which include native plants, irrigation best management practices, and mulching. So, as landscapers, I think a lot of our power lies in selecting the correct plants, putting them in the right place, and for the right time of year. I think native plants are great because they generally require less, if any, supplemental irrigation. They require less, if any, fertilizers, and less, if any, pesticides. Not only that, they also provide shelter to native wildlife, and they also provide a food source for native pollinators. So I think they're all around just a great choice if you have the option, and they can be really beautiful. I listed some of my favorites here, which are blanket flower, dune sunflower, coreopsis, and porterweed. And these provide really gorgeous flowers. They look really nice in a butterfly garden, and they can actually look really nice just as a supplement to exotics. The second is irrigation best management practices. So in chapter 3, we learned about irrigation and water management. There's a PDF in chapter 3 that you can go look at, but it's a little bit long, so I just took out a few things that I found really helpful. The first is that in any single irrigation event, you don't want to water more than 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch at any given time. So every time you irrigate, you don't want to irrigate more than that because that water can be wasted. Much of the plant's roots are in the first 6 to 12 inches of soil. They're 6 to 12 inches deep. So watering more than 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch would really just be wasteful. Not only that, we also have a lot of sandy soils. So in Florida, the water just goes straight down. And so watering more than that is, again, a waste of water. The second irrigation best management practice that I found really helpful was that focusing on factors for when to irrigate. So you'd want to pay attention to rainfall. You also want to pay attention to what growth stage the plant is in. So if it's flowering or fruiting or producing seed, it's going to need more water than a mature plant who has a deep root system and isn't doing those things. So you want to keep an eye on that. And then also you want to know the variety of the plants. So like I said about native plants, they generally require less, if any, supplemental irrigation. So maybe you would just irrigate supplementally like right when you plant them just to get them established. And then after that, they might not require any supplemental irrigation. They might just be okay with rainfall. So those are a few things to keep in mind. And then finally for irrigation, I found it really interesting that there's equipment that is basically a rain sensor that when it rains, it will shut off the irrigation. And I think that this is great for if you're managing a property and you're not going there that often, or maybe you have clients who go out of town very often. It's really nice to have that because if it's raining and your irrigation is turning on, it's just a huge waste of water. So I think those are a really good thing to have. And then the final sustainable landscaping practice is mulching. So I think mulching is very sustainable because you are taking plant debris and grass clippings and returning it back into the soil. So you're adding organic matter to the soil, which helps the soil structure. And not only that, it's going back to the plants and it's feeding the microbiology. And this is how trees actually do this naturally in the forest. Their leaves will fall and it will mulch their roots and it will compost down and add organic matter and feed the trees and feed the microbiology. So by mulching, you're basically just mimicking that practice. So I think it's a good practice. Not only that, it helps reduce pollution because if you're not blowing the turf grass leaves back into the turf grass canopy, or you're not returning leaves back into the landscape as a mulch, they could be disposed of off-site. And I think oftentimes they get disposed of improperly, and oftentimes they're not composted, and those nutrients can leak into our waterways and just can pollute in general. So I think that mulching is good for that reason as well. So just to recap, the three sustainable landscaping practices are selecting and planting native plants, also following irrigation best management practices for Florida, and mulching. And just one last note, under number 1 for native plants, I listed a link, and that has a full list of Florida natives from our university, and I think it's really helpful because it categorizes them into the type of plant. Okay, thank you.